afternoon, everyone. Okay, the broadcast is live. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremiah Carter, and thank you all so much for tuning in to this live. Just a quick shout out to our sponsors, Table Talk Media, the historic Dorsey RiverBend Association, Prince to King, and I believe that's all of our sponsors. If I missed one, I will get back to them. So the purpose of this is knowing your rights. We live in a difficult time right now where the turmoil is, you all can see it on the news between COVID and race relations. And a lot of people are wondering, what are my rights as an African American, as a citizen, as a taxpayer? What are my rights? And I'm so honored that we have someone special here with us who can talk about or give us some insight on what our rights are, and define some terms for us, legal terms for us that we're not aware of. Right now we have with us Miss Sarahnell Murphy. Miss Murphy, go ahead and introduce yourself to us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me. So as you said, my name is Sarahnell Murphy. The Sarahnell is a lot. I know it sounds fancy. It's not. It's really just my two grandmothers were Sarah and Nellie. So I have had the privilege of serving our community here as a prosecutor for the past 24 years here in Broward. And currently I serve as the division chief of our misdemeanor trial unit, which is county court. So I'm responsible for all the misdemeanors in our county. And I run quite a few of our diversion programs. And let's see, what else do? I do some of the hiring for the office and some training. And I have, like I said, I've been in that role for 24 years. I've been down here in South Florida since 1990. So
great. So just a quick question. Where did you go to school, and where did you find your passion for law? I always love asking lawyers that question. Where did they find their passion for law, and what made them, what moment in their life made them want to become a lawyer?
Okay, so I'm actually a Florida native. I grew up on the other coast of Florida, in Pinellas County, and I left there to go to the University of Florida. Go Gators! If there's any Gators out there watching. Undergraduate, and then I moved originally to South Florida because I thought I was going to go into law enforcement. My mom was a social worker all my life. Her last assignment was she actually worked in our jail system, helping people who were transitioning back into citizenship after incarceration. And my dad was a deputy. So I came down here to go through the academy, believe it or not, when I got out of the University of Florida. And I was working down here as a felony probation officer for a few years. And as a part of that job, I would have to make sentencing recommendations sometimes to the courts. I would go in and I would watch, the court proceedings and be a part as far as making recommendations. And then I actually also worked as an in-court probation officer for quite some time. And it was there that I discovered my passion to become a prosecutor. I knew that I could be doing more. So that's what made me go to law school. I literally went to law school for this job, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. That is so awesome. I don't think I told everyone out there who I am. I'm glad you introduced yourself first, though. For those of you who didn't hear, my name is Jeremiah Carter. I'm a proud resident of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I am a graduate of Florida A&M University, and I'm also a graduate from Broward College. I studied public relations, and I'm a community activist. This is what I love doing. I love sitting down and having conversations with our leaders, because I believe that everyone deserves a seat at the table. And I also believe the key to making a change in this world, it starts off with a conversation. It starts off with us having a conversation, sitting down together and saying, hey, how can we move forward from this? How can we move forward from what's going on right now? So my first question to you is, what is the purpose of the state attorney's office? What is the purpose of the state attorney's office, and how does it affect, just in general, how does it affect residents in general, whether they're in Broward or another county? How does the state attorney office affect those who lives in the county?
Okay, so most people, when they hear the term state attorney, they're not as familiar as when they hear the term district attorney. So people from up north, sometimes they watch TV and they hear the term district attorney. Same thing. We just are called state attorneys in Florida. So our overall job is to keep you safe, everybody. And so how our primary responsibility is that we are the entity that once law enforcement has done an investigation, they turn it over to us. And we are ultimately the body that decides whether to charge or not. And if we're going to charge, what to charge. And then obviously we carry the burden of proving those charges beyond a reasonable doubt. So we sort of are the second layer, if you will. When law enforcement is doing an investigation or makes an arrest, their work then comes to us for review. And then we decide, like I said, if to charge, and then if we're charging, what to charge.
Okay, great answer, great answer. So that goes into the next point. So when a police officer is arrested for a crime, whether it's wrongfully killing someone, it's the state attorney's office that handles the investigation. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is that, there's a process to, prosecuting an officer. And if you may, can you share with us, if you can, what is that process? Because, okay, so the crime happens, and then what happens next? A lot of people get confused as it goes to the state attorney, as it goes to the Supreme Court. What happens? Who,
right.
Who does what?
Right. Okay. So generally speaking, what happens is if a police officer is accused of committing a crime, the first thing is that an outside agency, meaning not their own, needs to do the police part of the investigation. So let's say, hypothetically, it's an officer in the city of Coral Springs. You wouldn't want the Coral Springs Police Department to be the investigating entity for law enforcement. So usually what happens is either the Sheriff's Department or the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, comes in to do the investigation. And that is just in fairness to keep it, transparent, above board. Then what happens after that part is then it's turned over to us. And we actually have a unit at the state attorney's office. It's a public corruption unit. And that's what they do. They then pick up the ball once they're given the investigation and determine, just like with everybody else, is there something to charge? Will we be bringing a charge? And if so, what is that charge?
Great. So my next question is, so right now, as you understand, there's a big, the big movement with Black Lives Matter and the police. And what do you tell a young person who is afraid of the police? What do you tell them if they're stopped by the police? What is my rights legally if I'm stopped by the police? And it's actually a two-part question. What are my rights if I'm stopped by police? And how does the Miranda laws affect me as an individual?
Okay, so there's a lot of different scenarios from that question. I'll start with the Miranda question part.
Yes.
So Miranda is, your Miranda rights are, that begin with, you have the right to remain silent. Everyone's heard them probably on television, right? So if a police officer is going to take you into custody, make an arrest of you, if they want to talk to you, they must read you those Miranda rights. No one can be forced to give a statement or talk. If you are the suspect of a crime and you've been arrested, you have the absolute right to remain silent. They need to inform you of that right properly and then ask you whether or not, you would like to have that conversation. So I guess the most important thing to know about that is that you do have a right to refuse to give a statement if asked. On the other hand, you also have a right to say your piece. But probably the other right that's very important that goes hand in hand with that is that you have a right to have an attorney. And so, and if you can't afford one, the court system will give you one. It's the Office of the Public Defender, which we'll talk about, I think, in a little bit. But
yes.
So those things are very important. It's important to know that you don't have to say anything and that you have the right to have an attorney with you. So that's kind of the arrest scenario, but there's a lot of other times and other scenarios where citizens and police officers may come into contact with someone. For example, if the police are investigating a crime and a description has been given of a person and they're looking for that person, you may hear the term BOLO, or be on the lookout, right? So that's a law enforcement term. So if they're looking for someone and they see someone that matches that description, they can go up to the person and have an encounter with that person. But you're not a suspect. You haven't been arrested. They're not going to read you Miranda. But you need to be cognizant that if they're having that contact with you, you have the ability to ask them why they're stopping you. So they have to have a reasonable suspicion is the legal term, which just means they can't just stop you because they have a hunch. They can't just stop you because they don't like the way you're dressed. There has to be a reasonable suspicion that they can articulate as to why they're having that encounter. And in order to make an arrest, there's another legal term called probable cause that they have to have, and that's a much higher standard than just a reasonable suspicion. Probable cause is required in order to make an arrest. So those are some of the legal terms that you'll hear talked about.
Now, you touched on a great point about not being able to afford legal services. If you don't have a lawyer, the courts will provide you one. You actually touched on a point, and hopefully Mr. Weeks come in, but I'm gonna let you answer this question. For those who cannot afford legal services, what are some resources that are out there for individuals who need legal advice and need legal services? Like, what are some areas, people can, areas they can go for help?
Okay, so just in general, having nothing to do with being accused of a crime, just in general, you're having right, like let's say you're having a problem, housing problem, or, in these times, people, even though they're not supposed to be doing evictions at all right now, if you're having a problem like that, a divorce, other things like that, indigent people can be assisted by an organization called Legal Aid. There are some very, very fine attorneys that work at Legal Aid of Broward County, and you can call you can look up their webpage and call their number, and that's what they're for. They're to serve indigent clients in our community, folks that can't afford an attorney. I worked with them a lot. I was the chief of our domestic violence unit for a long time, and they were wonderful partners in helping a lot of the victims with either immigration issues, a divorce issue, those types of things. So that's a wonderful organization, and they do great work. Now, if someone is accused of a crime and they need criminal representation and they cannot afford it, that's when the court system will appoint you an attorney. That's a fancy word. I just assign you an attorney. And that attorney would come from the Office of the Public Defender. And we have some very fine men and women over at the Public Defender's Office, fine lawyers, and they do a great job. So when you came into the court and you told the court, look, I can't afford a lawyer, they would have you fill out some paperwork, ask you some questions to determine financially if you were eligible for a public defender, and you'd be given one.
So there is a process, just to clarify, there is a process that you have to go through if you cannot afford an attorney. There is paperwork that you do have to fill out to determine your eligibility. And how long does that normally takes for an individual who was recently arrested once they fill out the form?
Not long at all. What happens is it's literally like a one-page form, and it just asks some real basic questions from, basically what's your income and what's your output, what do you have to pay to determine your indigency. And so that's a pretty quick process, and then that process can occur either, sometimes they have it even prior to their first appearance in the courtroom if they're in custody. And then if they're not, that would happen at what we call your arraignment, which is just the first time you're responding to court on the charge. And the court would make that inquiry, and you would do it right in the courtroom, fill out that paper, and they would make a determination. And there are members of the public defender's office, well, Right now they're on Zoom, but when the world works, when the world is working normally, they're in the courtroom every day with us. The prosecutors are there, the PDs are there. So when you're appointed that lawyer, they're right there for you to talk to.
Okay, great. And how does the public defender and the state attorney work together?
Well, we work, even though we're sort of, I guess you would say, on opposite sides of the
opposite sides, yeah.
Opposite sides. Yeah. But you're right. We work, I would say, in concert every day. I mean, right now we're busy collaborating on how to accomplish moving forward in this pandemic. And it's a big issue. So, you know, our job is to prove that a crime occurred, and their job is to make sure that we follow the law doing it, and to protect their clients' rights. So even though we're on opposite sides, we do work in the courtrooms together every day. Well, we did. Now we're on Zoom every day. And, you know, it's their job is to make sure we're doing our job properly, really.
Yes.
As simple as I can put it, that's probably it.
Yeah. Now, now, right now we live in a time where the justice system seems unfair to people of color. And we see that, I mean, we see that every day where we're protesting, we're marching, we're rallying for fair justice. What is your, how would you define fair justice, and what do you want to see in the future for people of color when it comes to fair justice? Because I'm gonna be honest with you, the system is broken. The justice system is broken. And how can state attorneys across the U.S. ensure that there is fair justice for people of color?
Well, I'll give you an example of a few things that I've done, because I think that's the best way to sort of demonstrate it. So, for example, our county started a civil citation program. Have you heard that phrase? So what that is, very simply, is it's like being given a traffic ticket instead of being physically arrested. And there's a fine associated with it, but it doesn't make you a criminal. So the county's intention was excellent in starting that civil citation program. It applies to misdemeanors. Its primary beginning was for pot, for marijuana. We know statistically that Black and brown people are arrested 3 to 4 times more often and stopped for marijuana than a white person is. The civil citation program was really a great initiative. The problem with the program, however, is that all of our municipalities were not on board with it, and that law enforcement was left to sort of figure out on their own when and where to issue these citations. So the state attorney's office, we were stakeholders in the program and supported it. I started asking for the statistics because the program started, and we would get a quarterly report on the statistics. And what I was seeing is that, unfortunately, what it was designed for, which is, you know, the kids in Lauderhill and Lauderdale Lakes, certain districts of Fort Lauderdale, the vast majority of the citations were being given in Weston. And so what I did is I went to my boss and I said, this is not being equally and fairly just used. And I expanded our own diversion program at the state attorney's office to give individuals 3 times to go through diversion for marijuana. So even though they got arrested, when they went through the program, the case gets dropped when they're successful.
Okay, that's good.
So that means that the kids that ended up getting arrested rather than getting a civil citation still are not being made a criminal over a small amount of marijuana. So I think it is, and you know, again, I had to go to the powers that be in my office, show them why, tell them what I wanted to do, and they were all for it. So when you ask me what my thoughts are, I mean, my thoughts are that it's my responsibility to exercise my prosecutorial discretion to sort of right that balance and right that ship when I can and where I can. And if I see something I think is inequitable, to fix it. I think the second major thing is to hold individuals who are in law enforcement who are violating rights or committing crimes responsible. There's no free pass because of the outfit that you wear to work every day.
I agree.
You know, quite frankly, as a public servant myself, you know, we're held to an even higher standard. We're here to protect you. I had dialogue this past week on this issue, and I said, you know, I have to say, I mean, I'm a prosecutor. My kids will tell you I'm the most overprotective mother on the planet, and that's probably true. But, you know, I've talked to my kids about the dangers that a stranger could give you. I've talked to them about the difference between a good touch and a bad touch, but I have never had to tell my children to be afraid of the police. It would have not entered my mind. And no parent in Broward County or anywhere should ever have to say that or have that conversation. So I think there's a lot to be done. I think that we are all stakeholders in this system, and whether that looks like us working to rebuild with the police, retrain, rebuild, you know, there are some professions where there just can't be a bad apple. There just can't be.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, because one bad apple unfortunately does spoil the bunch, and we see that now when we have, you know, one police officer or one state attorney does something, it spoils it for everyone, and everyone, you know, say, well, if I can't trust the ones who are supposed to protect me, then what am I supposed to do? So, and you kind of touched on it, but how do we hold officers accountable? How do we hold leaders and those who are stakeholders accountable? Because I think there's an accountability issue, and what can we do as citizens? What can we do to hold these people accountable that we're supposed to trust? That we're supposed to trust.
Well, I think it's happening. I think that we're doing it collectively as a community. I think that the agencies are listening now, and you know, it shouldn't even be an issue of. I'm not talking about now even law violations. I'm talking about an examination of, for example, hiring practices.
Yes.
Right? I mean, people aren't going to go into a job interview and say, you know, listen, I've got all these racist beliefs. You know, they're not going to do that. But you have to have a hiring practice to try to ferret out those issues. You have to couple that with training, sufficient training annually to guard against that. And then when you have officers that have, and again, just to be clear, because I want you to understand, state attorney's office doesn't control policy for the police. The police, you know, they have their unions, they have their police chief, they have legal advisors. They are the ones who dictate what that policy is going to be. We can have communication and dialogue with them about that. We can make our point and our, you know, thoughts clear. But, you know, if you have an officer who has, you know, 25 IA complaints, internal affairs complaints from the public, that's an issue. And so, you know, my thought is there's no one thing to do. It's all of it. We have to look at hiring practices, training practices, and who are we retaining? Are we retaining someone who is repeatedly, you know, investigated for misconduct?
Yes. Just a quick thing here. The hashtag is Dorsey311. So please use the hashtag if you have any comments or questions. I am looking at the questions if we get any as the live goes on. Dorsey311. And for those of you who are just tuning in, I am Jeremiah Carter. This is Know Your Rights, and I'm live here with our representative from the State Attorney Office, Ms. Sarahnell Murphy, and we're discussing your rights as an individual, your rights as a person of color. What are your rights? And this is what we are talking about right now. Now, how can we as individuals have a dialogue with the State Attorney's Office about what's going on, about civil unrest? How can we engage in that conversation with you all? I understand we're in the pandemic right now. I understand a lot of people are shut in and are quarantining, but how can we engage in a conversation with you all, even with the coronavirus going on right now, in a safe and socially distant way?
Well, you're doing it right now. You're doing it right now. So congratulations. I think it's great. I think the best thing, and you said this when we were talking before we started, is that communication is key. Communication is key. So, a lot of times people, their concern can be alleviated quickly when they're given the right answer. And quite frankly, I think a lot of that is can also be alleviated by just letting people know they're being heard. You got to say that out loud. You got to say, I hear you. I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is what we need to do. And all of the, we have such a wonderfully diverse population in Broward. And I think, that we're working hard at having our office be reflective of that community. And I think that helps, because when you say, how can a citizen reach out? If anybody can reach out, but people may be intimidated to do so. So I think that, we are doing a good job making the office. We need to do it a little more. We need to recruit a little more, and have those touch points in the community for people to reach out to ask us directly. Because if you can avoid sort of misinformation, that's critical. And then again, if you folks just want to be listened to, and that's easy to do.
I agree. We had a question that appeared, but it disappeared. I'm hoping the engineer, there it is. All right. So this question is from Betty Ann Beasley Williams. Is there a citizen board set up for policing the police in Dade County? Now that's Dade County, but we're gonna just say in general.
Okay. Hi, Betty. Yes, there is a citizen review board that is in Dade County. I'm not entirely familiar with its scope to tell you when it's utilized and for what. I do believe that it's used for officer-involved shootings, but that's about the extent of what I can tell you on that in Dade.
Does Broward have one? I don't think Broward doesn't have one.
No, right now the process in Broward for the police-involved shootings is a grand jury review. Okay.
Now, what's the difference between a grand jury? Since you brought it up, what is the difference between a grand jury and a citizens review board? What's the difference between the two?
So I'm going to just talk in general. I'm not speaking for Dade County because I'm not.
Yes, just in general. Yeah, and just in general.
So in general, a grand jury is obviously made up of Broward citizens. And if there is a police-involved shooting in Broward, the investigation, remember how I told you law enforcement does the investigation and they give it to us. That investigation gets presented to the grand jury to ensure that they then make a determination. Was this a lawful shooting or not? And they return their decision on that. Some jurisdictions throughout the country use differing methods. Some jurisdictions use a sort of a officer-involved shooting panel made up of people within the office who look at it and make a decision. Experienced prosecutors, a group of them. Some jurisdictions, the elected state attorney makes that decision on his own or her own. And then some jurisdictions do like a hybrid where they involve a lot of different things, including that citizen review panel. So it's kind of, there's a lot of options on how to do that.
That's a great question, and thank you for that answer. And thank you, Miss Betty, for that question as well. So yes, guys, keep sending in your questions. We will get to them as quick as we can. Once again, we are live here with Miss Sarahnell Murphy from the Broward County State Attorney's Office, discussing your rights. What are your rights? Do you know your rights? Do you know who your state attorney is? By the way, our state attorney is Mike Stats, for those of you who don't know, and your current public defender is Mr. Howard Finkelstein. So these are people that you all definitely need to know. You need to know these people's names. It is very important that these are people that you that you vote for, and they are there to protect you as a citizen. So it is important that you all know who's there to protect you. Here's another question from Mrs. Juliana Pittman. In today's social world, we really do have access to several officials. How helpful is it when emails and phone calls are made to the state officials regarding incidents like police-involved shootings?
Well, I'm reading the question over again. It's helpful in many different ways. A lot of the ways when we are getting phone calls or emails to the office regarding police conduct or police involved shootings, it may be people that have information relevant to the investigation. In other words, they actually were there, they saw something factually, and that is extremely helpful. Then we also have, folks that want to communicate their views on what should be done on a case. They're entitled to do that. And depending on what information they relay, that can be helpful too. So, it certainly is. I think everyone is keenly aware that as a society, we are watching our criminal justice system. And so I anticipate that those communications are going to increase. And again, I think dialogue and communication is key. I don't think there can be too much of it. So in fairness, I think that those calls can often be helpful.
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, if you see something, say something. And if you felt like you was treated unfairly, please speak up. Oh, we have another question. Kiara Buckner. Hello, Miss Buckner. Does the state attorney's office do outreach within the community? Great question, Kiara.
Yes. The short answer is yes. We do lots of things. I actually, in the county court where I am, where as the division chief, I have all our youngest lawyers. So they're a good little army of resources. And we got involved with an organization recently called Kapow that goes into our public school systems and teaches the children about our system and answers their questions. And most recently, I took a group with me up to Cypress Run, which is an alternative school here in Broward. And a lot of the kids that are there because they made mistakes and committed crimes as juveniles. And we went there to talk to them about the fact that the reason we call it delinquency is we consider those crimes delinquent acts. They're not by law considered criminal in nature, and that if they can remain with no law violations between 18 and 21, their records automatically expunge. So the purpose of being there is to say, look, yes, you made a mistake, or two, or three. It doesn't have to be the end of your path. So, I love to go into the school systems. I've kind of done it my whole career. That organization is great, and we're working a lot with them right now. There's others. I mean, I used to do the DUI manslaughter cases in our county, and I would go into the high schools at prom time and talk to them about, listen, if you drink and drive, with a presentation, you show them what can happen at prom time. So yes, we do. I think we have a responsibility to be community involved. We also have lots of wonderful assistants that are involved within their own communities and do many, many things.
Yes. We have another question, as you can see. I would like to know why the state attorney's office often prosecute the person who videos police misconduct.
Prosecutes a person who videos. Okay. So there have been examples of situations where we all have cell phones these days, and I'm trying to think of an example of when someone got arrested for videoing. If officers are on a scene, and I'm just giving you an example of something that I've seen, where they're trying to get control of a situation or circumstance, yes, and someone is, being aggressive in putting the phone. I mean, you have the right to video anything you're in public. I mean, you can take a video. It's how they do it that if it gets to the level where it's aggressive, then they can say that you're interfering with their investigation, or you're interfering with their ability to, calm the situation or whatever. And obviously those things are looked at one at a time, case by case. They're fact-based. And if there isn't sufficient evidence that what that person was doing was a violation of the law, that case would not be prosecuted. Should not be prosecuted.
All right, the questions are coming in. This question is from Mary Jane Pacheco. Is the ASO, the Office of the State Attorney, open to teens and their ideas? Oh, goodness. Is there a suggestion box? I'm assuming.
I know, I should get one. I should get a suggestion box. Yes, of course, we're open to ideas from teens. But listen, it's your world soon. We all need to listen to you. I think I'll give you an example. Unfortunately, with COVID, we had started with a lot of community partners with a project called the Justice Project, and it's partnered with the Urban League, with PACE, with a lot of great stakeholders. And the idea of it was to put teens in contact with law enforcement in a positive setting and to let them interact in a positive setting. Unfortunately, it didn't get too many legs going because of COVID. But yes, I mean, we're always looking for opportunities like that for partnerships to, again, communicate effectively, get ideas out. Of course, yes.
Great question. Great question. Yes. And let me just add into that. There are a lot of ways young teens I've seen can definitely get involved with whether it's the legal system, doing a shadowing, but of course, due to coronavirus right now, a lot of that, unfortunately, the coronavirus has slowed down things. And so we're hoping for the day when we can return back to normal so that we can have more of these programs. Now, I have a question here. For someone who committed a crime when they were younger, whether it's like a petty theft or stealing something or just a little crime, how long does it stay on their record, and why do people see, like, when they turn like 25, 26 later on down the line, some of this stuff is still on their record? So what are some ways people who are trying to clean their record of crimes they did eons ago, why is it still showing up on their record today?
Okay, so a couple different answers to that. People do have the ability to what we call seal and expunge their record, but you can only elect to do that with regard to one case in your lifetime. So that's an avenue for folks who have had that one instance in their life, maybe long ago. Matter of fact, the state attorney's office runs the seal and expunge workshops throughout our county often. We really, it's a great service so that people can come in and ask these types of questions, because there's a lot of rules for what you can expunge, when, who's qualified. So at those workshops, which if you're interested in those, you can go to our webpage and it has a calendar. Of course, COVID has messed up our calendar, but we will be bringing those workshops back live. And that's a great resource for the community to go if you wanted to go and see if you had the ability to seal and expunge something. So that's one thing. The other is, as I already mentioned, that with juveniles, if they remain crime-free in between that 18 and 21 time frame, then their record the juvenile stuff is automatically expunged. So, and that's for a reason, because you're making mistakes as a kid. It doesn't have to get you off track for the rest of your life. So those are two ways that they can do that. And then the other thing to keep always in the back of your mind is that's why that is a major reason and push behind diversion programs. That's like the one I was speaking of, where I said, look, now you can you can go through diversion 3 times with our program for a small amount of cannabis, so that it's not on your record. And even also some of our specialty courts, people who have a drug problem, who participate in our drug court, may be eligible at the end of that to have that case dropped. So specialty courts, diversion programs, sealing and expunging, these are all things that exist for that reason, to help people not, get derailed with so many things, including, not just jobs, but housing, all of it.
Yes. And these programs are free. These workshops are free. These workshops are free.
Yes, absolutely free. It's staffed by state attorneys, and our staff, our wonderful staff, secretarial staff comes, and our lawyers come, and we sit there and fill out the paperwork with the community.
Yes. Next question. In regarding to setting up a citizens board for policing the police in Broward County, who would who would be the contact person of the agency?
Well, I those boards are typically established by your county's commission.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my thought. And in the establishment of those, it would be your county commission.
Yes.
Although there's lots of stakeholders that would be a part of that too, but I would say that would be my thought.
Yes, I think I believe you are absolutely right. If Broward decides to establish a citizens review board, if I'm not mistaken, it would be established through the guidelines will be set through the county commission on who appoints what, because there'll be multiple stakeholders in the citizen review board. So, for example, I'm going to chime in on this. If Broward starts their citizen review board, say they want 15 people or 13 people on the board or 10 people, each person on that board would be recommended by somebody. So the Broward Sheriff's Office probably would say, well, we have 2 people that we're going to put on the board. Then the county commission will get to choose 2 people from at large who they want on the board. Similar to like how the Children's Service Council gets people on their board as well. So I'm assuming that's how they would set it up, because there'll be multiple stakeholders in that. So you would definitely want to contact your county commissioner for that. If you live in Fort Lauderdale, depending on what side of Fort Lauderdale you live on, if you live in the Sistrunk area, your county commissioner would be Dale Holness for that. If you want to contact that, who currently is the mayor. So that's a great question, and I'm hoping that does happen. But you mentioned something great, because I'm a big supporter of diversionary programs. I am a huge supporter of, if it's your first offense as a young person, I don't believe, depending on what it is, I don't believe you should go to jail or juvenile. I believe there's so many great diversionary programs that an individual can attend, and I'm a big supporter of it. You go 3 times, and each time, after that 3rd time you go, you're off and you're good, and hopefully you don't commit another crime. You be a great asset to our society. What are some other ways young people can get involved once COVID is gone past us? What are some other are there internship opportunities? I don't think I mentioned that. Are there internship opportunities? Are there shadowing opportunities? Are there instances where they can come in and to the court? I know the court is open up to the public. Are there instances where they can go into the courtroom and see how the flow is, the day-to-day of a state attorney?
So we do have internship program at the office. It's primarily for law students.
Yes.
And but we have brought both high school students and college students into the office on occasion. It's, of course, the court system is, well, right now it's not easy, but it is open to the public. So, I think as far as getting young people involved, once the world is back on its axis, if you're a young person and you're interested in the criminal justice system, I would say go down and watch a day in court.
Yes.
I get people all the time that ask me, they watch Law and Order and those programs, and they say, "Is that what it's like?" And I said, "No, it's not like that." But come down and watch, or reach out again for the younger people. If you're at a magnet school, you have a law program at your magnet school, or you have a teacher that is real interested in the topic, reach out to us. Like I said, I really enjoy getting involved in our schools. I think it's a great way of educating on what we do and sort of giving them a chance to ask those questions that they want to ask. So
yes. And they love, and I'm going to be honest with you, judges love when you come and visit their courtroom. They love that when you come and visit their courtroom and you speak to them. So you mentioned information about Miranda rights. Could you go deeper regarding what someone should do when the officer says, "I'll let you go if you provide the information"?
Well, so I'm going to give you a caveat that I'm not allowed to give you legal advice, but so this is what I'm going to say is that, you know, as long as they read your Miranda rights to you correctly and state the law correctly, you know, if they then make a statement like that, there's nothing that prohibits them legally from that particular phrase. They're not allowed to use unlawfully coercive tactics. But I think the most important thing to remember about Miranda is it's your right. So no matter what is said, no matter what is done, you have the absolute right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. So, you know, again, if you are there because you're a part of an investigation or you're just, whether or not they're asking you for witness information, I mean, it's up to you. I think that the public in general is a big help in solving crimes a lot. You know, someone may have seen something that they didn't realize was significant or important, and it is, and they're willing to help with the investigation. I know you guys see on, you know, the Crime Stoppers. I mean, that's a real, that's the real deal, and they make a big difference when folks are willing to help and to give information, you know, involving an investigation.
Great answer. And the young lady said that she participated in the Broward County courtroom internship, and she said it was very eye-opening for her. Yeah,
Oh,
it is very eye-opening. Yeah, it is very eye-opening. I had to watch, I went to school for journalism, so I had to go to the courtroom and watch cases from my communications law class and write about what I seen. And I was like, so this is not like what I see on TV. No. It's real. These are real people. These are real things. This is what real people go through. Great question. So once again, guys, this is Know Your Rights with Table Talk Media. I'm Jeremiah. I'm facilitating this conversation with Sarahnell Murphy from the Broward County State Attorney's Office. If you have any more questions or comments, please feel free to submit them. The hashtag is Dorsey3311, and the Dorsey RiverBend Association is located right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in the heart of the historic Sistrunk District. So use that hashtag Dorsey33311, and we'll be happy to answer your questions about knowing your rights as a person. It is important that everyone knows their rights. You read about it, read about your statutes. It's important that you know, if you're a homeowner, what are my rights? If you are in an apartment complex, what are my rights? As a citizen, as a young Black man, what are my rights? And just a quick announcement, if you want to be a part of the process, if you see something wrong, say something. How do you hold your leaders accountable who are elected to serve you? You have to vote. And of course, the Broward County primary, the primary in general in the state of Florida is August 18th. The deadline has passed to register to vote, but if you haven't registered to vote, please register so that you can vote in the general election. If you are self-isolating or if you're in quarantine and you're still afraid to go out and in public, fill out a request for an absentee ballot so you can get an absentee ballot. It is imperative that everyone votes in this election. And I am gonna mention this because we have some people who are running, and a lot of things will be changing. So please vote. Do your research on every individual that is running, so that you can know who's serving you. Now, is there anything else you want to share with us, Miss Murphy?
I just want to thank you for having me. I think this is great. I think these conversations are great and can bring a lot of information to the community. And just the fact that now maybe even if 2-3 people aren't hesitant to pick up the phone now, then that's progress. That's a step in the right direction. So It's been my pleasure to be here. And, our homeowners associations are a great source also as far as communicating. So, reach out if you want to. And I think we have to just keep this dialogue going. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk this afternoon.
We got a question. The question disappeared. How do you...
Where'd it go?
There we go. There we go. All right. I'm home in my yard. The police approaches me requesting for ID. What must I do?
So if you are inside your, and I'm trying to envision, if you're inside your own yard, if it's like a fenced in yard and you're in your own space, I don't know why they would have a basis to ask you for your ID. I guess there could be factual scenarios where they would have the ability to do that, but they would have to articulate that. So, again, they can't, if they walk up to you and say, can I see your ID? Unless they have a reasonable suspicion about something, then you can say no, and they have to say, okay. But if I wouldn't, it's hard to answer the question because I don't know, why are they asking? They're just asking because they happen to walk by and look and see you, then you can say no.
If they think that you're suspicious and this is your neighbor, because we see that a lot where people live in a certain neighborhood, and then when a person of color is in that neighborhood, the police ask them, hey, do you live here? Can I see your ID card or something like that? Does a person have to give the police their ID card if they live in that neighborhood and they're on their way home and someone stops them? Because we're seeing that oftentimes where people are calling the police on people who live. This is their area. I live here, but I'm getting the police calling me because I'm Black.
So, I would certainly hope, and I don't know what your thoughts are, Jeremiah, but I think that, we go back and forth on this word community policing. Sometimes, sometimes we think it's good, and then sometimes we think, no, they're kind of over policing certain neighborhoods. So I don't know. I think I'm kind of a middle of the road on that. I think it's good for the police officers to be familiar with the citizens and where they patrol routinely. I think that can aid as a public safety. But look, they can't do something just with the intention of harassing, or you know what I'm saying? So there has to be a legitimate reason. And now I'm going to give you my motherly answer, which is it's my motherly answer, Jeremiah. You're far younger than me. If they ask for the ID and you have your ID, show it to them. I understand the principle. I get it, but the mother in me says, show it to them. Because we don't, in a vacuum, we don't know. I don't know why they're asking. I mean, I certainly understand, and we've seen it where there's no reason. You're Black and you're walking in a different neighborhood. Let me see your ID. That's not lawful. So, but again, we have to use our common sense too when we're in those situations and responding. Like I said, in reflecting on this whole thing, and I never really had that conversation with my kids. I don't think anybody should have to.
And unfortunately, it's a tough conversation to have as a person of color, that I now have to tell those younger than me, this is what you need to do when a police officer stops you. Yeah. And I want to, and I'm trying to get them in the notion, because I work for the state of Florida. I work with police officers. I work for the Florida Department of Highway Safety. So I work with Black state troopers, and I work with Caucasian state troopers, like Latina state troopers. And so I do in the community, when I see police officers from BSO, I know them. And we
have a lot of great ones. We really do.
And and I tell them, I said, we have a lot of great officers. And I said, I have to give them that assurance. Like, we have great officers. Don't let one spoil it. And unfortunately, that one officer had bad intentions. And that's why we have to, that's why law enforcement agencies and have to have stricter hiring precautions and work out a way, because honestly, everyone, they want to defund the police, they want to reform the police. I just want to see some type of reform. So, start over from scratch. Start over from the beginning. Start over from the beginning and make sure that you are hiring people in place that reflect the community that they're going to serve. Just a quick.
The other interesting,
Go ahead.
I'll tell you one other interesting thought about that I've encountered now that I've been back in county court and I'm doing hiring. I think that I know from talking to some of the prosecutors that I work with who are Black, that they received a lot of pushback for taking the job. And I thought, what? And they said, oh yeah, they got a lot of pushback taking a job as a prosecutor. And I said, why? I mean, you're here to make the process work better. You're here to, and they said I asked them, I said, well, what did you say? And two individuals I'm thinking of said, this is where I can make a difference. This is where I can make a difference. So, I mean, I think positives like that and putting it out into the community are important. I think, I also think it's great when people now with their phones or citizens are putting out nice things about our good cops. I don't know if you saw the thing recently where the two guys down in Hollywood started playing basketball with the kids.
Yes, I saw that.
Game. I mean, that was great. I mean,
Yeah, and then recently we had an event that I had the privilege of being asked to moderate, where we were in someone's backyard and we had it was called Hamburger, Hot Dogs, and Healing. See, this is the same event. This is the same event. It was supposed to be, we were supposed to have this in someone's backyard, but due to the COVID uptick, we couldn't do it. But the last one that we did, we thought, hey, there is hope. COVID is going down. We did it in someone's backyard, and it was a time of just fun, food, and fellowship, where we sat down with police officers, we ate, and we just had the conversation of what's the purpose of a police officer? How can we get involved with them? And that's how, like I said, that's how we start this constant dialogue, And
that's
someone
great.
asked someone asked a question. Can the tech person show the question again for me, please? Do you have any local events in the future that we can take our child for ID? What is, I don't know what that means. Are you talking about a state ID, or because if you need a state ID, this is me talking about my job now. If you need
I'm not sure what ID, what she means by ID.
But I know, as far as the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles.
There you go. That's your question.
I think that's a question for me.
Yeah.
I know. Your child has to be at least 5 years old to receive a state ID. Your child needs to be 5 years old to have a state ID. You would need their birth certificate and 2 pieces of mail and their social security card. All right, I guess that was a question for.
I think that was
job.
for
I don't know. Yeah, but that's what you would need to do for your child. Okay, great. On behalf of the Historic Dorsey RiverBend Association, thank you, Sarahnell. You agreed short notice to participate on this platform, and that's Miss Pamela Pittman. She's the president of the Historic Dorsey RiverBend Association. Yes, thank you, Miss Murphy, for this conversation.
Very welcome.
And this was a great dialogue. I just want to say a special shout out. We lost 2 great civil rights legends. We've lost John Lewis this morning, and yesterday we lost C.T. Vivian, 2 great pioneers in the civil rights era. It is very important that we continue to carry the mantle. A lot of our great civil rights leaders are going on to rest with their ancestors, and now it is up to us. This is my message to my young friends, people who are my age. I'm 26. This is the message to you all. We have to carry the baton. The baton is being passed, and it is time for us to pick up that baton and move forward. We need to fight until victory is won. Like I always say, we have to speak out against injustice, and everyone isn't free until we're all free. This has been a great dialogue. I appreciate Ms. Sarahnell Murphy. How can we get in contact with you if we have questions that may haven't, no one may not haven't gotten a chance to post it? How can we get in contact with you?
The best way is to contact me. You can email me because, of course, we're sort of remote ourselves these days.
Yes.
And my state email is my first initial, S, Murphy. You know what? If I type it here, I can type it in this chat, can't I? And everyone could see it, or no?
I don't know.
Okay, so I'll say it, but then I'll also type it just in case.
Yeah.
It's S.
And the engineer, type it, and the engineer will copy it and paste it and it'll go across the banner in the bottom.
Okay, it's S Murphy at sao17.state.fl.us. They did not make them short and easy, but anyway, that's what it is. So anybody can email me if they'd like a question. Remember, I can't give you legal advice, but I'll try.
Yeah.
I'll answer your questions if I can. I'm not allowed to give you legal advice, but I'm happy to. I really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for inviting me. I'm always
if anyone
always happy to have
anyone needs,
I think conversations have to be with people, not about them.
Communication is key. Thank you all so much for joining us. And if you need to contact myself, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook. My Facebook is simply Jeremiah Carter, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions or just speak to you about anything that's been laid on your heart about this discussion. Thank you once again, and everyone, please stay safe and wash your hands and wear your mask.
Wear your mask.
All right. Okay, sound engineer, have you ended the live broadcast?